Hello, friends. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherri.
Sherri Beth, this is a big one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What episode is this?
40.
You guys, our podcast is over the hill. Oh my gosh, we made it to 40 episodes without missing a week.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive.
I am genuinely shocked.
Yeah.
Like, I am very, very surprised that this has happened. And this is not exaggeration at all. I think the topic we're talking about today is the one that I am the most excited about in our entire 40 episodes.
Wow.
Here's why. Because this is
do all the talking.
Because you're going to do all the talking. And here's why. We are doing like kind of a lessons from 40.
Yeah.
And you might say, oh, 40th podcast, you're going to talk about the lessons that you've learned while doing the podcast. No. That's actually not what we're going to do. Because there's another big 40 celebration happening here in just a few weeks, isn't there, Sherri?
Yeah.
What is it?
My 40th birthday.
Sherri's 40th birthday. And so we could have waited a couple weeks on this podcast, on this episode, in order to, do this a little closer to her birthday. But we thought, you know what? The 40th episode of the podcast, let's do the lessons from 40.
Yeah.
And we sat down just a little bit ago and kind of talked a little bit about this. And as you were just kind of sharing, I just asked you a couple questions and you just sort of went. Like, you just went off. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Because I think the things that you're going to talk about and share, as far as lessons you're learning and have learned, and just things in your life that you're dealing with and changing as you turn 40, I think this has the potential to really help and lend voice to stuff that we just don't hear often enough.
I think so, yeah.
Are you excited? Are you nervous?
Both.
Yeah? So here's one of the reasons I love that we're doing this is one of my favorite things. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with one lesson from 40 podcasts.
Okay.
Even though we said we were going to do this.
We did.
We're doing it. Calling an audible, Sherri.
All right.
It's what I get to do when I'm the executive producer of the LeggLife podcast.
All right.
One of the things that I have learned over 40 episodes is how great you are at the podcast format. And one of my favorite things that I have gotten to see since we started this podcast is your personality come out in a way that we just don't see on YouTube.
Well, I think that I'm more comfortable on this because I'm just in front of a microphone looking at you. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like there's a camera with an audience behind it. And I realize that there's an audience behind the microphone, but I don't know, it's just different.
Yeah.
I feel like it's easier for me to just talk like I normally would around people that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I feel like in the podcast, people get to, I was going to say see, but people get to hear more of the Sherri that I get to. Right? This is a more, I don't want to say true version, because it's not that YouTube isn't, but when you pull out a camera, it's weird. It just is.
Yeah, and I don't think that I'm any less authentic on camera. I think that there's just different facets of me that don't come out on camera.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about some things that I think some facets of you are going to come out, and I'm really excited about. And here's how we're gonna kind of break this up. I'm sort of going to moderate. And Sherri is going to basically lead this.
Yeah, so he's going to be asking me questions to kind of keep my brain on track because it's not good at that.
And kind of the three areas that we're going to focus on is emotional, physical, and spiritual. Like as you get ready to turn 40 years old, in what has been a really crazy year of your life.
Yeah.
Like what are the lessons that you've learned? What is... what are the things that are going to be different about Sherri in this next decade than have been in the past decade? Just those kind of things.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
I believe in you. You're going to do so good.
Okay.
Let's start emotionally.
Starting with the easy one, are we?
I was going to say, let's just get this out of the way. So you have done a lot of work, and emotionally, I'm going to include relationships in all of that.
Yeah.
You've done more work this year, I think, than I've ever seen you in this area of your life in previous years.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think that it sort of, for me, it started kind of around my 39th birthday, kind of realizing, this is my last year in my 30s.
Yeah.
I'm turning 40 in my next birthday. There's no going back. And kind of, I think in all facets, everything that we're going to be talking about, I think sort of began there. I think, just kind of realizing or not realizing, kind of wondering what is important, what's worth putting my time and attention to, and kind of coming to the realization that a lot of things that I've been putting my time and attention to are not as healthy as things that I should be putting my time and attention to. And so...
And I just want to interrupt real quick, just in case people are maybe new to our channel, new to us. That was even, so you go into your 39th year with this kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm turning 40 next year, reevaluating.
Yeah.
But like then in that, you get sick.
In that I get sick. And so, kind of, well, about a month after my 39th birthday, I came down with a really bad cold. I completely lost my voice.
Yep.
100%. Like I couldn't even whisper. Like there was nothing there. And so I had a lot of time to sit in quiet and think. And so I think that's where a lot of this wondering kind of started. And then in December, I got, my skin rash stuff really started. And that didn't go away until April, May.
Yeah, that's right.
May, really. And so I think, and it was really, really bad for the first few months of this year. And I couldn't move without hurting myself severely. And so there was a whole lot of sitting and thinking. And raging and, a whole lot of stuff going on then. But I think for me, going back to that emotional, I think that there's just a lot of things that I realized that I've been putting my time and attention to that I just really don't need to be. Relationships that I've been pursuing that are just probably not very healthy. Thoughts that I pursue that aren't very healthy. And really just is wanting to be healthier in all facets of my life.
In all facets, and a big one really is this whole like emotional health.
Yes.
Right, and so
I'm not typically a very emotionally healthy person.
Talk about that. What do you mean?
I am a very emotional person.
Yeah.
And I press into whatever emotion I'm feeling.
Oh, okay.
Good or bad. And so I think that realizing that about myself and knowing that if I am angry or hurt or whatever it is that I'm feeling, that's not on like the healthy side of the spectrum, that I should probably back off until I am in a healthier place to think logically about things.
Whereas your natural tendency...
And speak logically about things.
Your natural tendency would be whatever emotion is directly in front of you, you push completely into that.
Correct.
And so it's like if it's anger, you go all in on anger.
Yeah.
If it's okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so
if it's frustration, then it's really frustrating and that clouds my entire day.
And so now, basically what you're doing is you're trying to not focus so much on the emotion that you're experiencing directly in the moment, but kind of to have that moment of pause and like pull back, sort of breathe, and then like, how does that look? What does that look like?
Well, so actually, we were talking to my doctor about this, and she kind of, I forget what she called it, like the 5-minute rule or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That, you were allowed to feel whatever it is you're feeling for 5 minutes and then move on, because you just can't let it cloud your day. Life can suck sometimes, but is it like your entire life that sucks, or was it just that 5 minutes?
Yeah.
That you let ruin your day or your week or your year or whatever. And so, and, just kind of talking to her about that, like, she's not my therapist, she's my doctor.
That's
like,
right.
She's healing me physically, but also dealing with the emotional side, knowing that affects the physical side.
That's what I was just going to say, is that I remember being in the room for that conversation. That was what she said, is that because we were talking about like stress and anxiety with stuff that you have going on in your life, and kind of her saying that this is affecting the physical you, right? This emotional you is affecting the physical you.
Right.
And so...
And letting my anxiety really just get out of control because I'm so angry or frustrated or anxious or whatever. Really allowing that to just take over is hurting me physically.
Yeah.
As well as emotionally.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So this year, as far as relationships, you've also had to kind of learn boundaries. Like you're practicing You were practicing boundaries this year. Like,
Yes.
what does that looked like for you? Like, how are you doing with that? Mm-hmm.
Um, I, better in some places than others. I think that, I think it's still hard for me, I think, to just, like, cut people off completely, just
Sure.
because I am, a sentimental kind of emotional person. And so I tie sentimentality to people,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to keep that nostalgic sentiment regardless of who that person is, and so, or whether they should be in my life or not. And so I think that there's a few people that I'm probably still sort of hanging on to that I maybe don't need to, but, like, I think that there's also relationships worth getting over these obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, putting boundaries in place, I think has helped me maybe be able to step back and have, you know, a healthy distance in order to logically think things through.
Yeah.
So that I can maybe move that boundary a little bit closer and a little bit closer, and, you know, with the hope that eventually that boundary doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's been a year.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting year for me.
Okay, so emotionally, do you feel like you are going into your 40th year feeling like, do you feel like you're emotionally maybe healthier than you've been? Are you feeling super beat up? Are you feeling like, you know what, I've taken a huge step backwards? Like, where are you at going into the 40th year?
I feel extremely beat up, but I also feel like I'm healthier than I have been.
Oh.
Um,
So beat up, but it's a good fight kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, and I think that I'm beat up in the sense that I'm not willing to just be a doormat anymore.
Yeah.
I think. And I'm willing to speak my mind, where I really just haven't been in the past, because I don't want to hurt people's feelings, or I don't want to, you know, I'm willing for me to be the one that's hurt and not hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of realizing, like, emotionally and physically and spiritually, that's not healthy for me. Like, I can't take that anymore. And so standing up for myself, I think. So I'm getting beat up by it and getting some pushback from people, but I think that it's overall healthier.
So I just decided I'm going to do something throughout this podcast.
Oh, no.
Is each area that we go through, when we get to the end of it, I'm going to tell you what I see.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is going to be good, I promise.
Okay.
So, and the reason I'm going to do this is...
I trust you.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You believe the best about me, and I believe the best about you. So I think the reason that you're feeling beat up is that for the first time since I have known you, and I've known you basically your whole adult life.
About 25 years.
For the first time in your life, you're actually fighting back.
Yeah, and I think people don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, for the first time in your life, like you're getting your voice, and you've been getting your voice in a lot of different areas for a number of years.
Yeah.
But you're finally using it, and so, I don't know. I'm just really proud of you in this area because you've been. I think that you're one of those people who you would sacrifice your emotional well-being to make sure everybody around you is okay with you.
And I have for 4 years.
That's what I was just gonna say. And you're finally realizing that, oh, that's a really shitty way to live.
Yeah.
That's a really...
And it's not healthy for anybody. And
No.
I think that it clouds the relationship, because I have all of this built up hurt and bitterness and anger, and the other person has no idea because I just haven't said anything.
Completely.
And so now that I am saying things, people are like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The doormat speaks up.
Right.
Yeah, completely. So
Yeah.
I'm really proud of the work that you've done, partly because this is, in some ways, the easy thing would be just to continue with the way things have been. It's like, you know what, the simple thing is just to like keep doing what you've been doing. Don't rock the boat. Don't stir the pot. Don't just like, you know what I mean?
Yes and no. I don't think that it's easier. I think that...
Well, maybe when I say easier, what I mean is less confrontational.
Less confrontation. And I really hate confrontation.
You
I
do.
I really, really do.
Correct.
But I think that there's just a time and a place for it, and I think that's one of the things that I'm sort of realizing is that, for the health of everybody involved.
Yep.
I need to speak up.
Yeah.
And I need to address things and get things out in the open that I just haven't prior.
I'm proud of you. I think I have seen you do more work in the emotional side of your life over certainly the last year than any year that I've known you. And
Thanks.
and I think that's no doubt it's hard. I've seen it be hard on you. But I'm really proud of you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So now we're moving from emotions and relationships.
Yeah.
Let's talk physical, right? Emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
Because
They are linked.
They are linked for sure. And this was one of the areas that you really spoke a lot about when we were talking before this. So talk about that. Like physically, how are things going? What's going on?
Well, physically, I've lost a lot of weight this year. Mostly because I was so sick.
Yep.
Probably 30 pounds from when I was just so sick. An additional 10 or so from after that. Really just trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
Eating better and that kind of stuff. So I think physically I'm healthier for sure now than I was a year ago.
But even more than like what the scale says, one of the things that I've seen in your physical journey is more like this body image change, even over like a weight loss change.
Yeah, and I think that is more having to do with turning 40 than like a weight loss thing. Okay. So I think and women out there, I'm sure, can kind of understand this. I think that there is a certain ideal, and I think that for a lot of people, it tends to be like your high school body. What did you look like when you were 16 years old?
Sure.
And that's what I want to look like now. The problem is, I don't. And I honestly, when I was 16, I was not super healthy, and I don't think that I should have that body again. And I think, pushing myself and beating myself up because I can't get there it's just detrimental to my emotional and physical health. It's making it harder for me to get anywhere close to that because I'm just so overcome, I think, with like, this is never going to happen, and despair that I can't look 16 again.
And that's actually called, like, that despair has caused you to basically, like, it's held you back.
It has. And I think, for me, the thing that I kind of mentioned to Adam is even just like, sitting by the pool. I hate, I love sitting by the pool.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yep.
It's peaceful, it's relaxing, it's warm. I love the sunshine. I love water. I love just being by the pool or the ocean. I hate sitting in a bathing suit. And I think, a big part of that is because I don't have my 16-year-old body.
Right.
And I don't like how I look in a bathing suit. And I think, for me, it's kind of held me back from even wanting to do that. And I think, like, in my head, I'm that person that, like, everybody's looking at, like, oh, she should not be in a bathing suit.
Right.
And, nope, I probably shouldn't be. But you know what? Like, it's just this, I am who I am, and I'm working on it, and I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to get healthier, but I'm not there yet. And to prevent myself from doing things that I love, I think it's not good. It's not healthy.
Yeah, no, it's not good. And I would even say, challenge you on one thing. You said that no, I probably shouldn't be in a bathing suit. I disagree with that. 100%. I think even that mentality is just shitty.
It's just wrong.
It's just wrong because, like, because the reality is, and another thing you said at the beginning was that there's this, I don't remember what you said, like, there's this expectation on women.
Yeah.
Or you said, like, I think that there's this. No, there is, right? The reality is that
there
culture has put that on there.
Right.
And so I don't want to, like, diminish that. The reality is that we live in a world where there is this expectation and there's this pressure put on women to look all of that a certain way.
Yes,
right?
There's a beauty standard that
100%.
is set by culture that so many people are not anywhere close to.
Mm-hmm.
And will never attain.
No.
And so I just feel like we will always fall short.
Yeah.
And hence, we do not feel beautiful. Because
Completely.
we are not this beauty standard.
Yeah, and so what that does to you is that keeps you from doing things that you genuinely enjoy and love and that give you life because, well...
I'm not a size 0.
And so I don't want to sit out by the pool.
Right. Nobody wants to see me out there.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, like, it keeps you from living, really.
Yep.
So you're turning 40.
So I'm turning 40.
You're not getting younger.
It's not going to happen. And I just think that there's so much time and attention that I have given to trying to attain this beauty standard that I will never attain. And I think it's bullshit. Can I say that? I think that it just is. And I really just hope that the second part of my life post 40 is spent thinking and dwelling on things that are healthier than the things that I have dwelt on the previous 40 years.
I remember a conversation years ago with a friend of mine who worked for a big marketing firm, and we were talking about kind of expectation. And I remember what we were talking about, but it had to do with like women's image and that sort of thing. And he said something to me that was just like mind blowing, that the goal of creating those expectations is you create them in such a way that you never meet them. Because for brands, for like culture, they don't want you to ever believe that you met that expectation of beauty and culture. Because the second you meet it, you don't need product X or product, you know what I mean? Y or product Z. The goal of the expectation is that you never can meet it. In fact, in some ways...
So you always need their product.
100%. In some ways, I'm actually thinking, and this is going to be a weird connection, in some ways I'm even thinking about like the law, like Old Testament law. Like the goal of the law was, it was almost so impossible to meet. It was proof that like we needed something different, which is the whole reason of Jesus, right? It's like something is set up that proves that you can't do this.
Right.
And that's kind of what...
You will never meet this.
You will never meet this. And so I would say that it's not even about this realization that I will never meet the expectation culture has on women. I think it's the acknowledgement that the expectation that culture has on women is impossible to ever meet.
Intentionally so.
It's intentionally so.
Yeah.
It is never designed to be met.
Right.
Because, again, if you meet it, you don't need them. They need you to not be able to meet it.
Correct.
So let's talk about your hair, because this is one of the other things you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're kind of just in this, you know, you're going to do you when it comes to physical stuff.
Yes. And so that's really what I'm kind of pressing into. Like, I have the body that I have, and honestly, even at 16, 17, 18, I did not have what I considered the ideal body.
Right.
Because I've always had a booty. Always.
Yeah.
And... you know, I've always been bigger on the bottom than on the top, and there's nothing I can do about that. Like, that is how I'm built. And I did go through a phase in high school where I was basically anorexic and still could not get rid of that booty. Yeah. So that's just how I'm built. And, you know, kind of just accepting that about myself and realizing, yes, I can get healthier, but I have the body shape that I have.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, and I'm just going to press into that, and I'm going to dress for that. I'm going to, you know, it's just, I'm not going to try to hide that anymore, because why?
Yeah.
What am I hiding it from or for?
Yep.
And so my hair, I have spent 25 years trying to straighten my hair. It does not want to be straightened. It doesn't like it, and I have to fight it every single day to try to straighten it, because it wants to just be curly.
So help me understand, because again, I'm a guy who, remember, has no hair, right? Help me understand why the straighten thing. Is that something that you feel like in order to be like pretty, you're supposed to have straightened hair, or like beautiful girls have straight hair? Like where does that come from?
Yes, I think that there is again, with the beauty standard.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think curly hair tends to be less tame.
Okay. like more frizzy,
less in control. Mm-hmm. And so in order to have this perfect image, you have to be a certain size and you have to have the perfect straight hair.
Sure.
Or the perfectly curled hair, mm-hmm. which is usually straightened and then curled with a machine. Mm-hmm. And so just letting your hair curl as it wants to tends to be a little more, well, always out of control. Mm-hmm. It's, there's things you can do for the frizz, which I'm working on, but like, it's not ever going to be tame. It's not. And I think trying to straighten it and make it tame has damaged it a lot.
Yeah.
And so, it just doesn't want to be straight. It wants to be curly. Mm-hmm. And so the more that I press into just letting it do what it wants, the crazier it gets. And I'm just going to have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like, you have curly hair.
I have curly hair. Like... and trying to straighten it every single day, again, with the time and attention. Why am I spending so much time trying to straighten my hair, trying to make something that is true to me not be true about me? Mm-hmm. And it's just silly. And so I'm just not. So my hair is a little bit crazy.
I think it looks great. And that's kind of the...
Well, thanks.
That's one of the ironies in all of this. Like, I remember when you started leaving your hair curly, I was like, man, it looks really good. Like, and you were just like, you kept apologizing for it.
Because it's big and it's out of control and it's just a big crazy mess.
See, I don't see it that way. And I do think that that's one of the...
Well, I'm glad.
But I think that this is one of the things. It's not just about that beauty is the standard that you're never designed to meet. The other reality in all of this is that we all want what we don't have.
Yeah.
And so girls who I know who have straight hair wish they had curly hair.
Yeah.
Girls who I know they have curly hair wish they had straight hair. Girls who have big booties and no chest wish they had a chest and a small booty. Girls who have big chest, small booties wish they had a small chest and a big booty. You know what I mean? And so it's like, the reality is that you're either too light, you're either too dark, you're either too, you know what I mean? Right. Skinny, or you're too overweight. You're either too, like, whatever you are, there's this thing where it's like, man, I wish I was that.
Yeah.
And so I think that you're competing not only with like what culture defines beauty as, but you're also competing with this thing that just is, where it's so hard to be like satisfied or content with who you are.
Right. And so that's what I'm trying to be better at.
Yeah.
So going into 40, I am just pressing into who I am. Like, mm-hmm. I am this body shape. I have curly hair.
Yeah.
Like, it's me.
Yeah.
This is what I am. This is what you get. And so, and just spending less time dwelling on the fact that I am not these other things, because I'm not going to be those other things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. You feel good about the physical thing?
Yeah.
All right. So here's my thoughts.
Oh, here we go.
I know. My thoughts in this, is that more than what the scale says, and the reality is, like you said, you've lost a lot of weight this year. Like, mm-hmm. you're going into your 40th year, probably a lower weight than you've been almost at all in your 30s, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, that's good, but that's actually not what I'm proudest of. I really am the most proud of this mind shift that you're having around who you are. That you are approaching like the physical side of life with this is who I am approach. Yeah. But in that, you also are like, but also I want to be a healthier version of who I am. Right?
Yeah,
and so it's like,
I'm not willing to just settle for the body weight that I am right now. I will always have my body shape that I can do nothing about.
Yeah.
But I can fix the body weight, which was just moving toward a healthier me. Yeah,
and so you're still focusing and working on the health, but also you have such a healthier perspective of like who you are, and you're not apologizing for that. Well, actually, you do apologize for that all the time with your hair. You guys all the time share like, I'm sorry about my hair. I'm like, I think it looks dope.
Okay.
Like I think it looks so cool. I love it. I think it, like, it's great. I like this better than like the straight hair. And there's part of me, I'm just like, well, why the hell were you doing that for 25 years? Like, what are you doing? Crazy?
Well,
Like, let it out there, Hermione. We got this. Let's do it. I think it looks so good.
thank you.
You're welcome. So I do think that this is a really big issue, obviously, for women. Just kind of the perception of what you should be. And I don't know. I just think it's encouraging. It's encouraging to me to see you kind of starting with the question. It's like, okay, well, but who am I? You know, not who do I think I should be, not who does culture think I should be, like who is Sherri?
Yes.
You know, Sherri has curly hair. Sherri is a certain shape. Sherri, you know, there are certain things about you that it's like, okay, those are things that I can't change. And so I'm going to like press into that stuff.
Yes. And I think that who am I is probably the overall question.
In all of these.
Yep. What is true about me? And what are things that can and maybe should change? And then what are things that can or should not change? Cannot or should not change.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, pressing into those is my whole outlook right now.
That's really good. That's really good.
It's really hard.
Yeah. Well, no doubt it's really hard.
And I think, you know, like I'm almost 40 and I have no idea who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get to a place where I know who I am.
Do you feel like you don't know who you are because why? Because like there's been an identity.
Because I've buried myself for so long.
Oh.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally, honestly, spiritually, physically, I haven't physically buried myself, but I have held myself back from doing things because I don't like how I look physically.
Yeah.
And I have held back my thoughts and my wisdom on things because I don't think that people want to hear them, because I don't feel like I'm worthy to speak into situations, or because I'm afraid that they will not like me, or for whatever reason. And so I think I've just buried myself a lot.
I think so. I agree, and I've seen that, and it's been one of the things. Like I remember, and I think we talked about this in a podcast. Maybe it was in the relationship month. I don't remember. But like when we first met in person, like when you first moved to Alaska, just kind of this like, wait, like who are you? You know, this like you sort of kind of had this identity that I think you thought you were supposed to be. And really you've spent the last 2 decades like kind of discovering, well, who are you?
Undoing that a little bit.
Honestly, that's kind of what it is. And I think that it's taken that long to undo all of the things that have been put on you and placed on you, and labels have been given to you, and like
and things I've allowed to be put on me
completely. And so now you've spent so much time undoing that. You're kind of finally to the place where you're like, you know what? Now I'm ready to start the work of. I've stripped everything away, and so now I'm going to start like adding the things that I believe to be true.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool for me to watch. Probably terrible for you. probably sucks for you, but I think it's great to watch.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the last area.
Okay.
Spiritually.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier this year. We made a podcast about it, which I think I need to go back and look. I still think it's our most listened to podcast. It was this Faith in Crisis podcast.
Yeah.
You were kind of raised in this religious system, and then, you know, shit hits the fan with the sickness, and all of a sudden, like...
the platitudes of, you know, God's going to pull you through this was...
Platitudes and verses aren't very comforting.
No.
And so you've sort of been on this, like, this wrestling match. So where are you at? Like, because here's what I've seen. I've seen situations like this do one of two things. You kind of come out the other side, or you start moving to the other side, and either your faith is stronger, your faith is weaker, or your faith is non-existent.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it really is one of those three things. So, like, where are you at spiritually?
So I think that probably for the last decade or so, I've been questioning a lot of things that I was raised with, things that I thought were truths that I don't necessarily think are truth anymore. And, kind of digging into that a little bit. So I think probably the last decade or so, but I think definitely in the last year, being so sick and really just questioning God a lot. Like, are you even there? Do you care? If you are there, do you care? And if you do, I call bullshit, because this is not caring. Like, I don't know where you learned how to care, but this is not it. Yeah. And, so we kind of dug into that in that other podcast. And I would say since then, I'm still questioning a lot. I think that, I don't remember if we talked about it in the podcast, I hoped that, or I assumed that, farther down the road, we'd be able to see places that God had, that God's hand was kind of leading us, guiding us through.
You weren't as abandoned in the middle as it felt like.
I wasn't as abandoned as I felt like. And I don't remember if we talked about that, but I think that was sort of a assumption of mine, because I've seen that before. We've been through hard things, and then looking back when we were like, oh, well, this happened, and if it hadn't, then, it would have been a very different outcome or whatever. I can see those things. There's been a lot that just, in the last few months have really, like, come to light that I can see God's hand through me being so sick. I still have a lot of questions, because I still feel like I didn't have to go through that.
Couldn't you have done this another way?
Couldn't you have done it another way?
Sure.
There are things that for the rest of my life, I will have to do these injections. And, that kind of stuff that I just feel like is unnecessary.
Sure.
I feel like I could have maybe learned another lesson a little different way. And I just, I still have a lot of questions. And so, I think spiritually, I'm going to say stronger, than I was maybe a year ago. And I think probably because I have wrestled so much this year. And I'm just not willing to give it up. Like, I'm just not willing to give up my faith.
Yeah. And
I have enough faith in my faith and in God that I think we're going to get through this, damn it. Like, yeah. Whether you want to or not, we're going to fix this. And so, and I think that's where I'm at.
So on my work trip to Oregon, I stopped into a little bookstore downtown, and I bought a book by C.S. Lewis on grief. And I was reading that book when I was down there, and there's a quote that really stood out to me, and I think of you a lot when I think of this. C.S. Lewis talked about how through all of the trials, and he wrote this at a time in his life when I think it was right after his wife had passed away, and he was kind of going through this lament season and really wrestling with God. And he said this thing, he said, I don't know that my faith was ever in jeopardy. Like, I don't know that was ever on the line, but what was on the line wasn't that I would lose my faith. It's that I would start believing the wrong things about God. Right? It's not that I would believe that there's not a God. It's that I would believe that if there is a God, he is cruel and he is harsh and he is mean, right? Like, I can't give up my faith, but, like, I believe that God is this angry dad in the sky who is pissed at us, and he's waiting for us to screw up and punish us, because that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think back to, like, C.S. Lewis's quote that I wasn't going to give up my faith, but I was at risk of believing, like, the wrong things about God.
Yeah.
And I think what I've seen, again, my turn to chime in, I think what I've seen and what I'm seeing still happen faith-wise in you is that your faith is, and this is like, we're a decade plus into you, like, questioning and not even doubting, but really just like saying, okay, I want to know what I believe and why.
Right. What is it that I actually believe about this topic? Or what is it that I actually think the Bible is saying about this? And
so to me, like, what I'm seeing happen is there's, like, a lot of, like, roots that are going down, and there's, like, this foundation built where the things that you're learning aren't, like, flashy parts of faith. They're not, like, super showy and, like, I don't know, like, but there's, like, a bedrock there that is happening because of, like, all this crap.
Because I had to dig up a lot of roots.
Yeah, and I think that I think that the faith that I see you have now is, infinitely more real and authentic than what I've ever seen you have before.
Really?
I think that, completely. Because I think a lot of what you had faith-wise was so much like this cultural Christianity that you thought you were supposed to say this. You thought you were supposed to do this. You thought like it was kind of
supposed to do this during worship. I'm supposed to look this way and sound this way.
Completely. But here's the thing. None of that stuff helps when you're stuck in a chair for months and your skin is tearing and you don't know that you're going to make it to your 40th birthday.
Right.
All of a sudden that stuff is no help.
Yep.
And so that stuff was stripped away from you. Thank God it was. And I think that what is being built back is like, I don't know, that now you have this experience and I don't know, like it's just so much more real now than before.
Yeah. I've been through the fire.
That's kind of what it feels like, is that it's like what has come through is a more real and authentic faith because you've been through the fire.
Yeah.
And it looks dramatically different than what your faith looked like a decade ago.
It looks different than it did a year ago.
Yeah.
But I think especially a decade, 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
For sure 2 decades ago. It looks nothing like it did 2 decades ago.
No, it looks nothing like no. But
yeah.
But honestly, like I think it looks more like Jesus now. Like I'm just gonna be really honest. Like
yeah.
I feel like it looks more like what I think faith is supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I that's the hope. I mean, that's the goal. Right?
Totally.
Is to look more like Jesus. And so I think, yeah, I mean, this has been a really rough year in all areas of my life. But I think that I'm just not willing to just let it be anymore.
But here's the thing, like even, and this is, I hadn't really thought about this. It has been a really rough year.
Yeah.
Yet you're kind of going into 40 and you're emotionally doing work and healthier and putting up boundaries and unwilling to allow toxic relationships to exist because you have to. And so like there's this emotional health even after a really hard year. There is this physical health, not just in weight, but in like how you're approaching yourself even after a really hard year. I mean, even, and it's a million little victories in that area, Sherri. It's even you wanting to put up photos of when we did the exfoliative erythroderma video. You know? I mean, you were the one who was like, I want those photos out there because maybe they can help someone.
Yeah.
Like, to put photos of yourself out there is something that Sherri 20 years ago would not have done.
No, especially looking like that.
No, that's what I mean.
Like, I still can't actually look at those photos.
Yeah, but like...
I can't do it.
But you, like, that's what I mean, is that there is this progression that is happening in you.
Yeah.
And then spiritually, you know, that your faith looks different, but it looks more, like, authentic and real.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I just think that if there was a year that maybe you should be ending going into your next birthday being like, oh, I took a step back in every one of these areas because I got the shit beat out of me this year.
Right.
Like, this would be the year. Yeah, in all those areas, like, there's clear...
forward progress. Well, and I think a big part of that is, I mean, I think that it's twofold. I think going into 40 is daunting. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, part of that is I remember when my parents turned 40 and just thinking, man, that's old. And now here I am and I don't feel old. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I feel very old. But you know, mostly I don't know how I can be 40 because I don't feel like I'm old enough to be 40.
Totally, I understand that.
But then also I think, you know, all of the health stuff that I went through, we didn't know if I was going to make it to 40. You know, we didn't, there was a pretty big stretch of time there where there were questions of whether I would actually make it through that.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, making it through, really just gave me a new zest, I think, for life.
Yeah.
That, you know, we're not promised anything, and I didn't want to live my life in shadow anymore, I think. I didn't want to live this half life that I'd been just existing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you spend months watching your body attack itself and wondering if you're going to make it to your next birthday, all of a sudden feeling like you shouldn't sit out by a pool.
Seems really shallow.
Seems right, but it really does. Like there's a perspective that has come through this, and I think that's even maybe the word that I'd use when I kind of step back and look at what I've seen change about you. It really is this, like, your perspective on what matters changes. Your perspective on who you are.
What is worth putting my time into.
That stuff's changed.
It's changed because I think that I appreciate more.
Yeah.
The good things in life.
Yeah. Proud of you.
Thanks.
I'm
trying real hard not to cry.
I know, you're doing great. You're doing so good.
Thanks.
You've done a lot of really hard work this year. And I'm just proud of the person you're becoming, because I really believe this, that the Sherri Beth Legg that I see right now, I think is more true to who you really are than I have ever seen you be. And so I think that you are becoming who you are. I think that the work that you've done to strip away the things that you were supposed to be, the things that you felt you were, like the person you were supposed to be, all of that kind of stuff. I feel like the work you've done to strip that stuff away is giving way to the person that I think you truly are, and it's really amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You still love me,
yeah,
even though I'm a different person.
Yeah, I think back to a friend. I think back to a friend of ours who said that he'd been married to his wife for 20 years, and he'd been married to 12 different women in that time. But I think that the reality is, though, is that is the purpose of life.
I think if you're not growing as a person, then I think it's not good.
And I think the important question of, like, who am I really? Like, because every one of us, like myself included, if I asked that question and I was like, okay, over the next year, I want to become a more true version of who I really am. Like,
you have to know who you are to begin with.
Well,
to become a truer version of you.
Completely. So you have to, number one, figure out who you really are. Be okay with that. Be willing to strip the things away that hide that, and then rebuild.
Yeah.
And you've done that work.
I'm doing the work.
You're doing the work. Nope, it's done. Check it off. You're finished.
Oh.
You've reached perfection, Sherri.
So. Well.
Good job. Well.
I don't think I'm there yet.
Well, it's okay. You still have about 2 weeks till your 40th birthday. So just finish all 4 of your 40.
Oh, boy.
Right? Just like cross the rest of this off your list.
Check.
Perfection. Reached.
Perfection achieved.
Perfection achieved. It's like that would be the little, like, power up noise. Friends, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. When we first started talking about this podcast, we thought that it was going to go a different route. And then when I heard Sherri just kind of talking just a couple hours ago, I just thought, this is what needs to be shared. Like, this is what this episode needs to be. And so I hope that this has been encouraging and challenging and insightful. And
I think that if you're less than 40, don't wait until you're 40, and like don't wait to almost die to realize how precious life is. I think, and even if you're over 40, like, it's worth it to find out who you are and to stand up for yourself and to, to accept who you are.
Is there sorry, I thought we were going to the podcast and I have more questions. Is there this level of, I don't want to say regret. Like, I don't think regret's the right word. But I mean, in order to become like a more true version of who you really are, you have to admit that, like, crap. Like, I spent a lot of time, investing in the wrong relationships and giving, like, a place to toxic people and, Yeah. So, like, is there, I don't know, what are your feelings around that?
Yes and no. I think, I don't know. I think it's easy to regret not making changes earlier. But I also don't think that I would be where I am right now if I hadn't gone through all of that stuff. So I think that it's given me a different perspective because I've gone through those things.
Okay. I'm so glad that that's the direction you went with that answer, because that's where I was hoping you were going to go, because I wanted you to take it somewhere because I have a thought on this. And if you hadn't have gone that direction, it would have been really awkward.
Okay.
Because you had just talked about...
Yes, full regret. I should have started 30 years ago.
No. That's not what I was saying. Because you had just said something a couple minutes ago. You had said that if you're not yet 40, like, don't wait. If you are over 40, like, don't wait.
Don't wait.
It's not too soon, and it's not too late.
Yeah.
Because the reality is like, whatever you've gone through, good, bad, hard, all that kind of stuff, has led you to the place that you can get back to that, right? Like, you still can make the change.
Yeah, and I think that it's not too early and it's not too late to figure out who you are, what's important to you, and press into those things.
Yeah, because sometimes regret can be debilitating. And there's people that get so far down the road of regret that they almost like don't allow themselves to change, because like, well,
this is who I am.
This is who I am.
Right, but I don't think it has to be.
No, I don't believe so either. I think that, like, as long as there's breath, there's still time to change.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm proud that you are changing.
Thank you.
You're welcome, because I'm seeing, you know what? This is the illustration I'm going to give.
All right, Pastor Adam.
Oh,
Let's
gosh.
Hear it.
Here's what I'll say. In the same way that the Sherri we hear and experience on the podcast is a more true version of who you are than maybe what we see on YouTube, I'm seeing that happen in your life. It's not that you were a completely fake person a decade ago as you got ready to turn 30.
Right.
There was still like a lot of you in there, and amazing things and beautiful things and wonderful things that were there, mm-hmm. right? But the podcast is like a more true version, and that's one of the things that I love about this platform. But also, you going into 40, I see you being a more true version now than you were then.
Okay.
And so it's more authentically you. I think that the Sherri that I see now is more who you really are and less who you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Good.
I'm
glad you think that's awesome, because I really like you, and I don't. If you were like, "Ooh, I don't like the person you're becoming,"
ooh, we gotta have a talk, Sherri. Ooh, what the hell are you doing with your curly hair?
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
I love it. Why don't stop apologizing for your hair? I think it's so cool. I think I told you one time, like, to me, you look like a hipster artist.
Oh,
like, that's what I mean with your hair. You just like, I feel like you should have a booth at like a maker's market where you're just like peddling.
Forest Fair.
Yeah, like the Girdwood Forest Fair, where you're peddling your wares.
Yeah.
So
crowns.
I think it's awesome. I love it. Friends, I hope that this has been insightful. I hope you guys have learned something. I hope that this is, I don't know. I hope this is a podcast that you're able to listen to and kind of come with a question, be like, what are some things I could do to become a more true version of myself? I know that even as we've been talking, I have things in my own life that I'm realizing, I need to do some work there.
And I will say it is not easy. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And again, because I am 99% emotion, I've cried a lot. Going through a lot of these things, but I think it's so worth it. And I do feel like more me than I have. Mm-hmm. And I can't even say probably since I was a little kid. Really? Yeah.
Huh. That's cool.
It is cool. It's hard and it sucks getting there, but I think that it's worth it.
Gosh, what a perfect way to end the podcast. Friends, we love you guys. We want to hear from you over on the LeggLife Podcast YouTube page. Just search LeggLife Podcast on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, what the poop are you doing? Right? Like, go over, hit that subscribe button. Help us get those subscriber numbers up over there.
But that's where all of our discussions take place. And we would love to hear your thoughts.
100% really would, because I know that this is, I don't know, I really mean it when what I said at the top of the podcast. I believe that what we talked about today is more important than anything we've ever talked about on this podcast. Like, to me, that is like life-changing stuff. There's a lot of episodes we do that's like, oh, that was just entertainment. But to me, this is like life-changing stuff.
Yeah.
So, proud of you.
Thanks.
Love you.
Love you.
All right, friends, go over there. Leave us comments on YouTube. Can't wait to hear from you. And we'll see you next week on episode 41.
Yeah.
Where we talk about Sherri's 41st birthday.
The 41st.
41st. Dang it! I can't talk. We gotta go. All right, bye, friends.